Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Natasha Nurse. She's the owner and co-founder of Dressing Room 8. Welcome to the show.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you're doing is actually really innovative and pretty cool. But before we get into that, maybe let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm born and raised in Manhattan, New York.
Very
So
cool.
if anyone's familiar with Stuyvesant Town, that's where I grew up. And it's a really pretty and kind of quaint area of Manhattan.
Very cool. So you went to university. What did you take and why?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting question. So all my life, I really loved animals. And I think, because animals are like super cuddly and cute and all of that, but mostly because I wasn't allowed to have them in my apartment. So I had like a craving to be near all furry things. So, all my life, if you would have asked me, I would have told you I was going to be a writer, a dancer, a singer, a veterinarian, a doctor. I was always like super ambitious.
All right.
And so I actually went to Penn State University and I studied, my major was animal science and then my minor was agribusiness management.
Okay.
So totally different than what I do today.
Okay. So you also went to law school. What made you go into law?
Okay, so another fun question.
I love it.
So my freshman year, I graduated high school with like a 4.0. I had a 4.0 for 4 years. I was, the school girl. Like I was all about academics. And so when I went to Penn State, I would have never thought that I would ever not have an A because that was just my academic history. And surprise, surprise, I got my first C ever in life. And I was just like totally flabbergasted. I didn't even know what that was. Like theoretically, I knew what C's were, but I didn't ever think that I could have one personally. And I'm really glad for that moment, that teachable moment, I would say, because it taught me that, you don't know everything, right? And that you have to always learn. And even when you think you're good at something, you can always be better. And then I started thinking more and more about what it meant, like realistically, to be a veterinarian. And I had to have a talk with self, and she told me, listen, this isn't my life. The first couple of weeks at Penn State, I watched a pig get slaughtered in front of me because that's just kind of what happens when you're taking veterinarian classes.
Oh, wow.
And it broke my heart. And I realized, I think I want to play with puppies and kitties. I don't think I want to dissect them or treat them. It's my passion for animals is purely as a pet owner, not as a physician for them. And so
makes sense.
Essentially, as I continued on with my studies, I switched gears and went from the pre-vet mode into the business side of things. And then I started taking law classes because I did have family members that were lawyers. And I guess to answer the question, I would say I was following really this expectation of life. I wasn't necessarily doing it for me. I was doing it under the guise of, my family's from Jamaica. Okay. And if anyone knows anything about Caribbean culture, they're very heavy on be a professional. Like you bring your kids here for a better chance in America and your kid becomes a doctor, a lawyer, a professor, an engineer. And so I was following that path of I should do this because, being a lawyer is something that's very proud and, your family will be proud of you and excited for you. But was it something that I really wanted? I mean, now thinking back, hindsight is, 2020. Sure. And no, I don't have the personality type for it. I am a lawyer, but most people are don't even believe me because, I'm very different from the average type of lawyer. And I never really practiced. I had a non-traditional legal career anyway. And I think it all worked out because I wasn't intentionally pursuing a career for me. I was following through expectations. And, you know, usually when you do that, it doesn't yield the outcome that you want for yourself. And then you live that and you take the student loans that come with that. And it's quite a journey.
No, interesting. So walk me through your career up until Dressing Room 8 and how did that come to be?
Yeah. Okay. So went to law school. I had perfect timing. I went to New York Law School and I started the year that the economy crashed.
Gotcha.
And
yeah, perfect timing. Yes.
Perfect timing. I was really, it couldn't have been better. And I tried to not freak out like most of my cohorts in that same situation, but you know, it was challenging. I continued to strive and again do my thing at academia. I did very well, and I graduated cum laude. And unfortunately, when I was interested in trust and estates or real estate law. Those were the two areas that I was most interested in. And there weren't a lot of interviews that people were getting, and when I did get interviews, it just wasn't a good fit. For some reason, I think the universe was just saying, "Hey, girl, you know, no, shift gears."
That's awesome.
And
though.
yeah, and it just. Yeah, you know, it's all like I'm really grateful for the whole experience because even though I never like actualized kind of what I supposedly intended to do, it made me a better person. Law school is a wonderful breeding ground for making you a smarter, more capable, or more analytical, better thinking person because they try to break you down mentally, spiritually, and everything in between when you go there, much less financially as well,
sure.
Right? So it's an interesting comedy routine that happens, and I became a different type of Natasha. I grew and I learned, but essentially I ironically got into sales, which I'm really grateful for because people need to understand the power of how to talk to people. People need to understand the power of sales. Sure. Everyone is selling something or someone, right?
Or
like we're all selling.
Even?
It's just, what did you say?
Or yourself, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're selling something. You're selling yourself. Sales is critical. It's how people put food on the table. Like you have to learn the art of sales. So did that. But then again, the inner part of me was like, oh, but I need to do this law thing, right? These expectations, these should that I was following. And so then I did a little bit of document review projects, which is essentially in litigation when people are suing each other, right? Each party has to provide documents. And so who's looking at that? And so there's a whole actually like industry of paralegals and lawyers who are involved in that process. So I kind of jumped into that world of fun. And then again, perfect timing, Hurricane Sandy happened. Oh, wow. And if you remember, so that like washed away literally the projects because buildings were flooded. New York City was a mess. New York was a mess, really.
Sure.
Like, so then I was kind of out of a job there. And then I had the brilliant idea of saying, well, you know, I really liked my legal recruiter who staffed me on those projects. I was like, oh, maybe I should do legal recruiting because it kind of combines. I was starting to think a little bit about what I liked in life, but it was just kind of responsive instead of proactive. So that situation led to me becoming a legal recruiter, which understanding how to hire, how to fire, what employers are looking for, critical information. I've used it ever since. So did that for a little bit, but then I had an opportunity to join a bar review company. And I was working with them while I was in law school, so I was already really familiar with them. So went into that opportunity, and then December of 2015, like I think maybe about 2.5 weeks before Christmas, then there was a reduction, a 30% reduction across the country. So Here we go again. The universe was like, hey, Tasha, you think you have a job? That's so cute. No. So then I kind of got fed up at that point and was like, I'm tired of constantly, again, reacting to situations instead of proactively defining, what do I want out of life? What do I need? What is going to make me happy in my career? And that's when I started to explore the idea of entrepreneurship, because I said, well, if you start to build something for yourself, there's a certain level of autonomy that is under your control, which I really felt was missing in my career, because again, it was always trying to fit myself into some mold or some box, because you got to pay bills, you got to do this, that, and the other, and you should be doing things. But I was tired of like living life under these shoulds, right? But what do you want? What do you need? And so if I was going to start a business, it had to be dedicated to something that was near and dear to my heart. So for me, I knew when it came to a skill set, what could I offer? What could I do? Well, I've always been a writer. I've always been creating content. I've always been a fan of social media. Fashion was something that was important to me, because as a plus size woman, being bullied, being chastised, being scrutinized in society that doesn't welcome bigger bodies, that doesn't welcome difference. I used it as an opportunity to kind of build my own confidence and create the impression of myself that I wanted, so that people could focus on the conversations I'm having or the presentations I'm giving, not what I'm wearing on my body. And so essentially Dressing Room Mate is a coaching and consulting platform. I started it pretty much then, and back in 2015. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a tremendous journey. I do a lot of blogging. I do a lot of public speaking. I coach one-on-one models, photographers, people in various creative and non-creative careers who are looking to transform something about their business, about their platform. And then on the consultation side, primarily working with people on building their social media, putting out content that is more innovative, that resonates more with their audience. And then, other side things I do in addition to that, outside of Dressing Room Mate, I started a podcast called WokeNFree with my husband over a year ago. That has been tremendous for our relationship, for the message that we're putting out there about, what young millennial couples are going through, what people of color in our age group are thinking about, and what matters to us. I wrote a chapter in a book. I've traveled more. I've just been kind of open to opportunity, open to listening to myself. And again, not what other people want of you or need of you, but what do you want? And that's a really long, drawn out answer, but there you go.
No, I think it's good, right? And I think the interesting thing that I take out of it is basically you chose one day to just go for it and build a bunch of platforms and tools and do a bunch of things around your passions, right? And making a business out of that and basically controlling your own destiny, really. So
absolutely.
So I'm curious, though, I want to dive a little bit deeper in when you talk about coaching and working with different types of people. What types of stuff do you really like to help people through? I know you quickly touched on it, but I want to dive a bit deeper into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, the coaching that I primarily focus on is accountability. I think a lot of people, when I'm working with other people who are building their businesses, business entrepreneurship is a very kind of solo arena, right? You don't necessarily have a lot of people, or it's not a team sport necessarily, especially if it's a small group or an individual like solopreneur kind of thing. So being that person who holds other people accountable, if you say you're going to build out a social media calendar, that you're going to pitch yourself to do some more media work, who's holding you accountable for that, right? If your friends aren't going to really kind of put the whip to it, that your family probably doesn't even understand what the heck you're doing. A coach is a really good resource to have you be accountable for weekly or daily goals that you said that you're set out to achieve. I also focus on helping people own the idea that like they can pitch themselves. A lot of people actually ask me like, oh wow, like how do you get like interviews? And it's like, so you have to send an email, right? Like you have to like put yourself out there, right? And a lot of people don't know that. They're like, but what do you mean?
Yeah.
So hello, my name is, right? Like actually helping people work through the idea of like that they can put themselves out there, because just recently I just came back from Austin, Texas, and was talking about how to build a business with media, and was talking about the idea that essentially you are your brand a lot of times. So you have to understand how do you pitch that? How do you get yourself out there? How do you jump onto podcasts? How do you get on TV or do things like that? And so helping people craft their story, master storytelling is kind of what I talk about a lot with them. And then also internal organization, right? Sometimes you're so busy in the busyness of your business, but you have to be in your business and then also working on your business, right? At the same time, sadly. And
no, fair.
So how do you... Right? Like, so how do you carve out time on a weekly basis to have that reflection and take a look at analytics, take a look at the money and figure out, okay, is this going well? Was this a good ROI? Like really focusing on the growth of what you're doing, because you can get so caught up with just being busy, checking emails, got to do these phone calls, got to do this networking event. But like, where is it going? Where is it leading? Is this fitting into the intended plan? And again, the plan will shift and mold, because that's the beauty of business. But
Sure.
Still, if you don't plan for success, you're essentially planning for failure. So, really helping people to be their best selves in their business, be confident about what they're doing. And then, for people who are interested in focusing also and primarily I would say these are the women clients, on the image that they're presenting. How are you dressing for events and meetings? How are you working on the presentation when speaking to people as well? Are you coming to things with the most presence and confidence that you can? And if not, let's work on how do we work on our 30-second pitch of who you are, what do you do, the who, what, when, where, why, and how of you.
No, I want to get on to that in a second, but I really want to step back for a second and recover what you talked about a few minutes ago about, I think people overthink a lot of things. And to your point a second ago about actually getting on podcasts or putting out content or just getting things in their career, you literally just need to ask, and you just need to start sending out emails or making connections or asking others to introduce you. And you know what? 90% of the time, it may never lead anywhere, but all you need is it to happen to you one time, and it snowballs from there, right? And it's interesting because I find a lot of guests for the show, basically one of three ways. I figured out early on finding good guests takes a ton of time. So I partnered with a bunch of PR firms in big cities across North America, which send me their guests that I kind of give them a guideline of people. The second way is I still do reach out to the odd person here and there. But majority of the time, people just send me an email and say, hey, I think I would be a good guest. Here's why. And I would say majority of the time I have them on the show. And and so I just kind of wanted to reiterate for people, because I think sometimes it's so mystifying how some of this stuff happens. But at the end of the day, it's literally you just send a quick email. It could be a couple of sentences and a link to your website.
Yes, absolutely. Well, so what I think it comes down to is everyone's different, but for women at least, there's women are kind of indoctrinated growing up to not be too boastful, right?
Sure.
To not put ourselves out there. So we have to reverse engineer some of these gender normative, horrible behaviors that have been taught and trained and put into us. So there's people who have to work through that. There's also a lack of worthiness. Am I worthy enough to be interviewed? Am I special enough? And so again, if you're in the business to make money, then people have to know what you're doing, right?
Sure.
Because otherwise,
fair.
how can they find a website, right? So people have to work through this worthiness issue. And then also, I think that what I like to call it is hungerness, right? If you're hungry enough to start a business, which takes cojones. Like you have to, it's not easy. You can't just start. You have to look into what business structure you're doing and all of the logistics of starting a business. And then once you've arrived, you owe it to yourself to be ferocious, to be a shark, and to go out there and say, hey, look at me. This is what I'm doing. This is my unique proposition. Want to talk about it? Cool. And so you have to be hungry enough to do that. And people who are, yeah, you're absolutely right. They send out those emails. And I have found as well that like a lot of people say yes. Like people would be surprised how many people say yes to you.
Yeah,
and
totally.
And I don't know if it's in media why people feel like they're just going to get shut down all the time, or they don't feel special enough because they're not on, television. But there's a bigger world outside of TV, and there's a bigger world than most people think. And yeah, it really is. It's like, do you want it? If so, send the email. If so, go on and send those LinkedIn messages. Have a call. Like, just say yes to yourself, say yes to opportunity, and the world really is a really opening and unique place for people. But it starts with that intention. Like, do you want this or not?
Yeah, no, totally. So I want to touch on the second point there. You mentioned about helping people dress and choose clothes for different types of events and things in their lives. Do you want to dive a bit deeper into that? Because I think that's super important. And I think I know you mentioned women struggle with that, but I think guys struggle with that as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So for us, I would say, well, like for me, I have found fashion to be a comforting place. I have found fashion to be a bit of a savior for me, because growing up, I've been plus size. Like started gaining weight when I was about 6 years old, and it was traumatic. I was one of the few Black kids in my class. I was one of the few plus size kids in my class, and so the bullying, the attack, the mockery, not having a lot of friends, right? And so I had to figure out, well, what was I going to do? And so what I could do is try to learn to dress for my body. I have a kind of a high-waisted pear shape, so like a bigger bottom. So anyone who has like the triangle shape, really trying to figure out how do you dress those curves, how do you dress those wide hips, all those things, and it can be frustrating because sadly we live in a world where 7% of women are plus size in the United States. Yet I think less than 20% of retailers cater to us. So that math never made sense, and it never will. But we do have more brands and companies now diving in and are like, oh, it's a $20.1 billion industry. Oh, I guess we can make money. So now they want them checks. So they're coming through, which is good. Again, whatever it takes to get everyone serviced is what I'm about. But you have to spend time and attention and understand what is your signature style. What are colors that work well for your skin color or your skin tone? What are types of dressing? Is a maxi dress good for you? Understanding and essentially it means you have to invest time and energy and money in figuring out what works for you. So you've got to try subscription box companies. I'm a big fan of like Dia & Co. I'm a big fan of, companies also that do consignment, like Style for it, right? Like also if you're into eco-friendly. So figuring out, what are your personal preferences? Some people prefer preppy. Some people like every different style, every different type of body type. It just requires time and energy. But once you do, it gives you a level of confidence. It gives you a level of comfort. Once you identify, okay, these are the 10 brands I can shop with, at least for this year, you know where to go. It saves you more time. And it also helps you to define the brand itself, because when people are looking at you, so for instance, if you are, say, in maybe you're in a holistic business or you do yoga, right? So you want to make sure that you have really good athletic wear, because when people see you running down the street or going and doing retreats and events, people, the first thing they do is they look at what you're wearing. It's the first thing people do. They look you up and they make an assessment. Yeah. So what is that assessment going to be? Very much will come down to not only what you're saying, not only what you're wearing, but also how you're just standing in your truth. So, being confident, being assured in the clothing you choose can help you not only build, a reputation for yourself in the way that you want, but it also can give you more business, right? When you seem more confident and happy and excited in your life, people are attracted to that. People are very, very much attracted to confidence. It's, why we call Beyonce Queen Bee, right? It's not because she's shy and, introverted. Sure. I mean, it's like, yeah. When Beyonce walks into the room, you're not only excited as Beyonce, but you're like, wow, what is she wearing? Right? Because her fashion is an element of her slayage, right? What makes her Queen Bee. So, it's a big part of the package. And you're absolutely right. It's not just women, it's men who, me and my husband will talk about this as well. He'll like try to bounce off, oh, should I wear this? And it is funny to me because I guess because as a woman, I have always just thought like women spend more time thinking about what we're wearing. But no, yeah, like the guys, you guys are like, well, I don't know. And what do we,
well,
and it's interesting. Yeah.
I think the struggle, at least for me, is I don't really like the suit and tie, and I work at a startup, so I'm not expected to wear that. So basically, the typical jeans and a hoodie or flannel shirt, that kind of thing. But the thing is that it's the times that you actually have to dress up and maybe put on a suit and tie. And I find, my biggest struggle with that is finding something that doesn't look like the stereotypical suit. Like, I don't want something that looks like grungy or something, but I want something that looks like dressed up and grown up, for lack of a better term for it.
Yeah,
but I don't want it to also look like the exact same thing everybody else is going to be wearing at that event or whatever I'm going to. So even if it's like the pockets are cut different, or there's maybe like a third pocket on the jacket that's a bit smaller, like little things that are kind of just set something apart. I find I struggle with that in just me personally, right? And obviously it's easier for me to shop, or even day to day if I had to wear a suit. I think you walk down, a downtown of any major city, and all the guys look the same because they're basically all wearing different shades of the same types of suit, right?
Yeah.
And so, but girls, it's a lot harder because you're expected to wear different outfits every day and make sure they look different. So where guys, I think, can get away with maybe wearing the same suit or the same suit once a week, or maybe whatever, right? I think it's a lot easier for guys, but I think we do struggle sometimes when there's like those one-offs where you have to dress maybe like a grown-up or something. And that's where I get intimidated anyway.
Interesting. Have you tried the Amazon kind of box service that they offer where you can kind of try out clothes? And then, because my husband tried that and he really liked that like, you buy what you keep and, send back what you don't want.
I heard about it and I read about it. I haven't actually tried it. I should though. You're right. Interesting. So
yeah, I get a lot of clothes as well on Amazon. I think Amazon is a wonderful repository of clothing and options. And I totally agree with you. The details matter, right? The details is what, again, it puts that finishing touch on it. It allows you to feel differentiated from things. Also, trying out vintage options. I know some people, it's not all, sometimes, again, it requires more time. It's not about, maybe you can't find everything in one place, but, trying out new things. And I think Amazon, you should definitely check it out, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's good advice.
There's no even fee, I think, when you try it, which is kind of really interesting.
That is interesting. So I'm curious, though, because obviously clothes range from, if you get something from maybe secondhand store, from a few dollars to hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Is there a rough range that you recommend to people, or does it really more matter on size and fit of the clothes, or what's your thoughts around how much money you actually need to spend to make yourself look good and feel confident?
That's a great question. So it's going to come down to both. So I do think budget is important. And so, someone who has making six figures and has thousands of dollars of discretionary income per month is going to shop different than someone who has a more modest lifestyle, right? So you're going to think about your budget and how much you like to spend. But for women especially, but all people, men need to think about this as well. Fit is everything, right? Because whether you're wearing something that's hundreds of dollars or it's $10, if it doesn't fit your body well, it's not doing you any justice. So I think you really want to focus in on understanding your body type, how things need to fit on you. Do you need to get things tailored? A lot of times if you're petite or you have certain dimensional things about your body that that make clothing a little bit more tricky, you have to invest in having tailoring for every piece, and that adds a couple extra bucks onto every item itself. I think you also need to think about the arena for what you're dressing for, right? Like a lawyer in a conservative, buttoned up law firm dresses very differently than a kindergarten teacher, right? Yeah. Or someone at a startup. So, what's the culture for which you're dressing for? And then, what type of fashion style do you have, in the sense of do you like to wear new things all the time? Like my husband jokes and says, I have 6 months of clothes where I could dress and not have to wash my clothes because I have so many different clothes, right? Because I don't like to wear the same thing all the time. Again, for me, if I'm getting photographed or I'm doing things, I like to live it up and have different options. But some people are more like the, white t-shirt, blue jeans every day. They're totally okay with that kind of consistency. So you have to decide how frequently do you need different looks for yourself, and constantly exploring. So I would say if you're really interested in honing in on your signature style, you also want to think about also working with stylists. Like I just did a couple of interviews with a stylist, 3:44 p.m. and her name's Monisha Kapoor, and she was talking about the value of working with someone who that's what they do, right? Like that's all that they do every day, all day. And so working, because some people don't want to invest time in their style and their fashion. So if you don't want to do it, then you need to pay to have someone kind of understand your fashion personality, and then supply kind of the clothes to you so that you can try it on, works, doesn't work, and then work it that way.
Yeah, no, that's actually quite interesting. The thing that I kind of want to follow that up then on is how important, and it probably really depends on industry, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, about actually getting kind of brand name stuff. Because sometimes, in my opinion, you can spend hundreds of dollars on something, but if it doesn't look good or doesn't fit your style, but it's Gucci or somehow, I don't know. I'm not really a big fashion person. Clearly, you could probably guess that by talking to me. But if you're wearing these brands that are well known that you clearly spend a ton of money on, if it doesn't look good on you or doesn't fit you properly, it's not really helping you. Is that fair to say?
I would agree with that in one regard, but then I think that works for the average person, right? But then there's this celebrity culture, right? Where where you said maybe it depends on the industry. I think that's also correct, because I think that the Kim Kardashians, the celebrity athletes of the world, they're kind of expected to rep that type of clothing or those types of brands. So I think the average person, I think the stance of if it doesn't work well for you, it doesn't matter if it's a high posh brand. I think that's a true statement. But then depending upon your industry, there are, and so that's where you have to decide, are you dressing for others or are you dressing for yourself? I always recommend dressing for you, because life is too short not to do things for you. You will regret living for others in any way or segmentation of your life. So, I think celebrities, maybe they do enjoy the Gucci's and the this and that. I don't know. We'd have to talk to them and really see, because part of me thinks they are doing it because you're supposed to, because you're a celebrity, right? You're supposed to have gold chains if you're a rapper. You're supposed to have all these tattoos if you're, and but maybe they, so, it's kind of like, is art reflecting life reflecting art? I don't know. But I think ultimately, if you don't like it, if it doesn't make you feel powerful and capable and happy in your life and while wearing it, then you shouldn't wear it, because it doesn't matter if you spent a bunch of money on it or everyone knows, oh, that's like the newest or most exclusive sneaker that came out. Like, who cares? If it hurts, it hurts. Like, I personally recommend style and comfortability. It's not mutually exclusive. They always go hand in hand. If it doesn't work for you, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Someone else will. So it's all about just, making sure that you're comfortable, because if you're comfortable, you're confident. If you're confident, you can focus on articulating your message to the world, because ultimately, yes, what we wear is important, but what we say has real impact and real meaning in this world.
Sure. No, I agree. And I think certain industries you're kind of expected to own or shop maybe or have certain clothes from certain types of stores, just because in a lot of cases, at least to some people in that industry, it shows if you're successful or not, right? For better or worse. And because, well, I think the perfect example is if your lawyer shows up in kind of this rusted, barely drivable car compared to some sort of luxury car, right? Like, and that's just kind of who we are, right? As a society, for better or worse sometimes. And it's the trust factor, right? I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Because people sometimes can be more superficial than needed. But what's interesting is if we looked into the data, most millionaires are not living in like these millionaire mansions, right? Like, if you look at people and what wealth planning really dictates, it's about saving and it's about investing, and it's not in depreciable assets like vehicles. It's about really understanding the value of what money really is to you. It's a tool, so you have to use it well. And there's like a Jamaican proverb that says, save money and money saves you. Like that you really, it's if you're trying to really succeed at life, it's not about spending all your coins. It's really about understanding what type of financial planning is good for you and your household and your family. And of course you can treat yourself, but like, if you're a fan of like Dave Ramsey, he's a big proponent of cash, right? Like, you can buy whatever you want in life on your cash. So if you can't buy it with cash, then I guess you shouldn't have it. And so, go ahead and get those Gucci glasses for $3,000 in cash, right? And if people started to think about that, I think we would shift how we shop. We would shift how we look at opulence and wealth. And it's not always about the pretty shiny things, but it's about, does it work, right? Does it get you from point A to point B? And that needs to be good enough, not just, how much glitter factor is involved.
I agree. And it's interesting because I know like a few really wealthy people that I've known, like we grew up together, and their family's like very well off, like private jet well off. And it's funny because like his dad drives like a simple car, like an SUV. His mom drives like a minivan for a number of years. And, they have a bunch of houses all over. But if you look at them, or I've been over to their house on like a Saturday morning, and his dad's in these like bleached kind of sweatpants, and like the neck's like, the shirt's all faded and the neck's like fraying and it's kind of larger than it should be. And you're like, maybe it's time to throw those out and upgrade the pajamas. But it's kind of a weird thing, but it's the people that seem to get a little bit of money. They need to get all, like, basically max out their credit cards and make the minimum payments on everything they own. And I'm not trying to be mean to the people that do that. I'm just trying to give the people that are trying to aspire to have those things, talk about the realities of what those people are going through. And some people can handle and want to have that lifestyle, but some people don't realize that, like, are you fine making minimum payments on a lot of those things and stressing out? Because if you lose your job, you lose all that and it's gone, right?
Yes, Absolutely. That's exactly for us as well. Like I live in New York, but I will not be living in New York forever. I'm planning to move to
Sure.
another part of the country. I'm moving to Arizona actually, not too long from now. And a big part of it is just the expense. New York is an unforgettable city, and I'm from here. My husband's from here. We will always be New Yorkers as a part of our identity. But to live in a city and you knowingly know that you could live a cheaper, more enjoyable experience elsewhere, like, what do? Do you continue to be here because you should do it? Again, it always comes back to this expectations, right? Like, who are you living for? What is the best decision for you? And sometimes I think even people choose to live in cities just because it's glamorous, right? There's a lot of things that happen in New York or LA, but if you can't afford it, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you got to think about, is this the right decision for you, right? It's the same thing as your fashion. Is this just because I can put it on a credit card, should I, right? Is that impression, a part of what you really want? Or, what would be an alternative decision that would be more authentic to what's good for your wallet, what's good for the bigger plan that you have for yourself?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think the other thing, too, that people should maybe consider, to your point, is if you live somewhere else and your cost of living's a lot less, you have the ability to travel. Because I know I spent like a summer down in LA and I had a great time. And but when you live in a city, eventually you only do a handful of things. You only go, a handful of miles from where you kind of live on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of people, and I know people that move to, say, San Francisco, and they just struggle to get by. It's like, oh, you must do this and that and this and that. And they're like, I haven't done any of that because I can't afford to do any of that, right? Where if you visit San Francisco, because you can save money to actually go and enjoy some of these cities that you get to travel to. Sure, maybe only travel for a week or two, but if you get to do all the stuff that you want to do in those cities, and maybe you go back once a year, every few years, and do other things, or like, is that better or worse? It's not really my call, but it's something to think about, right?
Definitely. Yeah. For us, we were just thinking that it's just like, New York is getting out of hand. I just saw, like, on a news reporting, I think the median average home cost here is about $455,000 a year. And that's, I don't know. I mean, if you come out here and you see that, I just think that's, like, in Long Island at least, that's crazy, because that's probably only getting you maybe three or four bedrooms, 2 baths. It's not, knocking you off your feet here. It's just kind of the regular, maybe probably a little bit above a starter home. You know what $455,000 would get you in other parts of this country? You could have a mini mansion, in Atlanta. You could live very well. And I totally agree with you. That's a fabulous idea. Like, why not live in an affordable place and then travel to the cities that really excite you? And yes, set your week up to do theater and to do these different types of things that you always want to do, and actually get it done. Because I agree with you. I live in New York, and I do not enjoy the full Monty of what New York can bring you, because it's just getting into the city is just super expensive. So it's it's something to think about. I think, but I was just listening to a thing by Kevin Hart. A lot of people just don't understand finance. They don't understand debt. And so they just make these decisions because, again, right, if you're not taught it and you don't have a hunger to go out and learn it, then what do? You do what's around you, right? And if your parents aren't kind of financially savvy, then most likely you're not going to be financially savvy unless you have the prerogative to go out and learn what that means, and read and learn from the Dave Ramseys, the Susie Orman, the Tony Robbins of the world, right? If you don't go out and get that information, then you're stuck being another generation of making the same mistakes over and over again. And that's how we have the divide between the first 1%ers of this country and then everybody else.
Yeah, it's interesting too, right? And I also think too that people think that if they attain X amount more money a year or X amount of wealth, that their problems will go away. And it's like, it's different problems. Right. And I read a really good book. The name escapes me, but it basically talks about this guy was like a wealth manager for very high net worth individuals. Like they had to at least have a couple $100 million in, of assets before he would take them on as a client. And he outlines their problems of their lifestyle. And in a lot of cases, you start thinking, wow, like money caused a lot of problems between immediate families where like money got them divorced and their kids turned out to be not great people because they were spoiled and didn't really realize. And you don't think about all these kind of side effects of potentially getting all this money. And not saying that happens every time, but it's not always this rainbows and everybody's happy and life's great. It can cause so much unneeded stress and grief, right? That sometimes people end up going to live simpler.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I forget the study that's out there, but it says that like once you hit around, I think $77,000 or $78,000 a year, the happiness like that is achievable through wealth or money doesn't really change. So yes, you can go on and make more than that, but like once people achieve kind of enough money to live and have like that little extra, it's about the experiences. It's about the moments in life, right? I think that's why I think they say that like with millennials that like the millennial spending has been focused more on like experiences and not necessarily just things, because you know when we think about big term, like a big picture of our lives, you know, you're not going to remember all the things you bought, but you're going to remember that the time and the unique travel experiences you had, or you know when you started a business and it did grow and how that experience was for you. Like it's about the moments that we take with us and that you know we go and transition with. It's not about the Gucci, it's not about the Mercedes. Like I love those things too, but you know just really understanding like what are we here for, right? And so it's the same idea, you know, why people are so angry with like diet culture, because it's like, really, are we here in life to learn how to just lose weight every year and that's, you know, get in bikini season? Like bikini season, is that really the purpose of life? No, like the purpose of life is to really figure out like who you're going to be, that type of self-discovery journey that we're on, and then how can we make this place a better arena for the next generation, which is why kids nowadays are so angry about all the environmental issues, because our current day powers that be are not thinking too much in advance for what needs to be done, right? For 50, 60 years from now, what will planet Earth be, right? And that's an important conversation for the youngsters, because they're going to be alive. We're not going to be alive for that. So, you know, and so that's, you have to think big picture and kind of past just the short-term gain of things.
No, it's interesting, right? And then even just working with the clients that you work with to kind of break down those artificial barriers, right? In all the different verticals, right? I think is actually really quite interesting, because so many people are their worst enemy and they think they need some of this stuff to be successful in other people's eyes, which is, it's like, well, you need to be successful in your own eyes, right? Whatever that means.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's about forcing people to get really real and honest with themselves, which is not something that's taught in school. This is, you know, something that you learn later in life. And so what does it mean? You have to reverse engineer a lot of the stuff that's been drilled into you. And so, yeah, it's really, what does success mean? Like, write it out as a definition for yourself, right? Because for some people, it's literally coming home and seeing their kids to bed, right? That's a successful day or life for them. For others, it is acquiring and amassing massive wealth and building empires. And that's cool. Like, we all have our own definitions, and our definitions are multifaceted and multi-parted, but we have to define it for ourselves, because we can only back into that if we know what we're backing into. So I think, it really does come to kind of, what do you want? Who do you want to be in this world? And then, you know, building out and having things flow from that clarity that you set for yourself.
No, I totally agree. You've mentioned a podcast a couple of times. What's the podcast called, and what do you and your husband talk about?
Yeah, so WokeNFree started in 2017 now. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it started. I did it on my birthday. We launched it. Yeah, on my 31st birthday.
Okay.
And I'm 32, turning 33. So yep, that makes sense.
Sure.
And he's always been just like, he's my best friend. I met him freshman year of Penn State, and
Nice.
we've been together ever since. It'll be about 15 years in
Wow.
September.
Congrats.
Together, and yeah. Thank you. And 6 years of marriage this week, actually. And
well, congrats.
and
That's awesome.
thank you. Yeah. And he's my best friend, my favorite person. And he's been super excited, kind of the discovery that I've had for myself and through business and media for Just Remain. And we just got to talking. And for us, like, I call myself a bit of like an intellectual lover. Like I really love conversations, as you can tell, right? Like I can talk for the end of time. And, and I do this with him. And we have these really elaborate conversations, like 2:00 in the morning. We're like talking about like theology and spirituality and fashion and technology and everything and anything that matters to us individually and as a couple. And we were like, we should put this out in media and put this out in the world, because the conversation of like, is love dead, is a terrible notion to be in. Love is one of the most meaningful things you can ever achieve in your life. Like sure. Finding my husband and being in love will be one of the, if not the most significant thing I have ever done in my life. So
no, that's very cool.
Love. Yeah. Love has really, it's been just a rock and a steady boat for me to just exist in and have a sense of security in. And so we wanted to put that out, that like, love is not dead, guys. And then of course, as well, being both people of color, I think that there's not enough representations of like Black couples
sure.
that are successful and happy and that actually like each other, that don't throw things at each other in public. Like we wanted to put that image out there, and then also talk about the value of like, when we talk about things in media, what Khalil and I were both frustrated with is that, people will have a lot of thoughts and opinions on things, but I don't necessarily know if people line up the conversation fully. Meaning, when you talk about something in politics or you talk about something in religion, do we define it? Do we talk, like, give people a little bit of context? So we call our podcast Woke and Free because we want to get people woke, awakened, essentially on a concept, on a topic, right? Sure. When we talk about something in, we talk about everything. We talk about media, we talk about technology, we talk about politics, food, we talk about sex, we talk about love, relationships, history, everything. And we always want to give people some understanding. What are some articles out there that you can read that give you a little bit of context about things, right, and then get into the opinion piece, right? So, and that way you are educated, you're woke, and then you're free to make a decision. You're free to decide you agree with us, you don't agree with us, you agree with your partner, you don't agree with your partner. And we want people to have healthy conversations. I think some of the saddest things I see now in media is that people are so tribal, and so you either agree with them or you're dead, and you're and that's like, that's not healthy, right? with how people are conversating now.
Sure. Well, and the other thing I find too, and I'm curious to get your thoughts, is people, like, whether you agree with somebody or not, that's kind of irrelevant to my point. It's some people just don't even understand the other person's side. So if if you're a morning person and I'm a night person, which I am, but the fact that it's almost like that person can't comprehend that other people would be morning people. And it's like, well, if you're something, why can't somebody be the complete opposite of you, for better or worse, in whatever topic, right? That's always kind of fascinated me. It's how, like, people can't even think or understand about the complete opposite opinion of theirs, right? And try to understand where that opposition is coming from, for good or bad, on any issue.
Absolutely. I think people, it's a value of like, well, why can't you just think like me, right? Yeah. And it's this lack of compassion, this lack of appreciation for difference. As a person of color, I'm a woman, I'm plus size, I'm Black. So, I walk around with a lot of identifiers that make me different. So sure. I personally feel I have a lot of compassion for difference, because I have to constantly defend and or describe and or educate people on the differences that I walk around with, right, as those are part of my identifiers. But I agree with you. There are a lot of people who aren't exposed to enough difference. So it's just their way or no way. And they don't even understand, like you're saying, the idea of difference and why it's okay to be a morning person, or it's okay to be a night person, or it's okay to be, Democratic or Republican or independent. Like,
Sure.
we all have different identifiers. And I think that if we could take a moment to understand and appreciate how wonderful that is, that we're in such a diverse time in history, that we could take the time to get, well, what does it mean to be a night person? What does it mean to be different, and get their perspective? And whether you agree or disagree, that's you're absolutely right. That's their position. It doesn't really matter to the other person, but just hear other people out. We're not hearing each other enough. And it's creating a worser America. It's creating a worser culture for our children to see adults behave the way that they are doing in the homes, in public. It's really breeding a lot of the hatred and negativity in this world, actually.
No, I 100% agree with you. And it sounds like you guys are basically just trying to put out some positivity in the world and getting people to think, right? And I think that's amazing. I think that's great. But
thank you. Yeah, we've had a lot of fun doing it, and I think it challenges people, right?
Sure.
We talked about like colorism, right? Colorism is a huge issue when it comes
Sure.
to people of color, not just Black people, Hispanics, Indians, every marginalized person can have an understanding of that. And like, let's talk about it, right? And let's talk about how we're seeing it in film, and also our internalized issues with it. We both come from families where our parents, our mothers are both very light-skinned Black women, and what were the complications and sort of judgments and criticism that lay onto your children that we both have to have dealt with, and how does that affect our Black identity? And so really just talking about things that we've dealt with in our past, things that we're curious about, certain things in the future. We've talked about time, what it is as a construct. We talk about money. We've talked about things that we're reading about, that we're learning about, and we're bringing it to the forefront. And we're asking people, take a moment, get educated, and make a free decision on it, and decide to have this and take this conversation and talk about it in your home. Talk about it with your friends. The more that we can learn, I think Marie Curie has a phrase that says something like, the more that we understand, the less we fear.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of fear, and there's a lot of anxiety, and there's a lot of anger and animosity going on. And it's simply because we just don't understand enough. And even when we think we understand, we don't.
No, totally.
Like, there's always something to learn and another way to see something. So we just encourage people to think a little bit more, to learn a little bit more, and to be open to the conversation and to the possibility of another opinion and another viewpoint.
No, I think that's really great. But sadly, we're out of time. So let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself, Dressing Room Mate, the podcast, and any other links you want to mention.
Absolutely. Thank you. So again, thank you for having me. You can learn more about me and Dressing Room 8 by going to dressingroom8.com. And there you can find the social media handles. Facebook, it's DR8 Fashion. On Instagram, it's dressing_room_8. If you're interested in the podcast, go to WokeNFree.com, WokeNFree. And then there again, you'll find us WokeNFree, all one word, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. And then if you want to email me, Natasha at dressingroom8.com. And I just thank you again for having me and having a really cool conversation.
Well, thanks for doing it, and have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.